Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Liners, Week 3 of the college football season. I'm John Creighton in Las Vegas, joined by Jeff Stodd, who runs Las Vegas Sports Services, and longtime Vegas odds maker Sean Hess. We're going to take a look at the upcoming games for the college football weekend from a Las Vegas perspective. We got 3 games on tap. First, though, we have to make amends for what happened last weekend. All 3 of us on the show, we loved our best bet as the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Buckeyes!
The Buckeyes just they let us down. We have to
from the get-go, there was no worrying about it. We were dead from the opening kickoff.
I know it, and you know who we feel like this week. Not the 3 wise men, but these 3 guys here.
Curly.
Mo, Larry, and Sean. So, Sean, I'm going to have to start with you. What the hell happened to the Buckeyes?
Why are you asking me? We stunk. It was. I was going to call Urban Meyer and say, Herb, dude. I mean, at least win the game, make us. It was, they just got outplayed, out everything, out coached. They didn't have to be out coached because they were never in the game. It was just terrible. It was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, I'm flummoxed too. Jeff, what did you do? Would you go there to Ohio State and give a halftime speech saying, blow this one for the Gipper? I mean, what happened?
Jeez.
Well, the only good thing for Ohio State fans is that Michigan was equally embarrassed this week by Notre Dame.
Oh.
JT Barrett looked decent against Navy, but I obviously Virginia Tech did a good scouting job on him and found some weaknesses. So this week he was only 9-29. He was sacked 7 times. So just one of those things. I wouldn't think this would happen to an Urban Meyer team, especially at home. But Virginia Tech always has a good defense, and I obviously underestimated that.
Yeah, well, all 3 of us did. Okay, let's move on to the first game.
Please, let's move on.
Let's move on quickly.
Quickly.
We got our first game going. It's going to be a Thursday college football game. Houston against BYU. The line opened 16.5 on the Cougars at home. Now up to 18, so they're getting all the money and all the respect. And this Houston team is kind of an unimpressive 1-1. I mean, did get the win over Grambling last week, 47-0. However, that opening game, they played Texas San Antonio. They got steamrolled, 27-7 loss. And this is a Houston team that should be much better. They were expected to be a top 40 team this year. 8-5 straight up last year. 9-3 against the spread. You got 8 starters back on offense, 9 on defense. It's going to be the first road game for Houston. But Sean, it's been kind of a baffling start. I know it's early in the year, but sophomore quarterback John Cohen last year, 28 touchdowns, 10 picks as a freshman. He's a big reason why they're expected to be good, and yet 1 touchdown, 4 picks last year. The team had 6 turnovers in that opening game, including 4 picks from him. So really the question here is, who are these Houston Cougars?
Well, let's look at some stuff here. First of all, you're right. It's a Thursday ESPN game. It goes at 6 p.m. Pacific time, which would be 9 o'clock out on the East Coast. BYU, there's no total on the game, but an 18.5-point home favorite versus Houston. I haven't seen a total yet, but it's going to be way on up there. Houston currently 1-1 straight up. They're 0-2 against the bookie. This is their first road game, and it's a long plane ride at that. Houston has always generated a lot of offense, going back to the middle 60s when I was a student there, believe it or not, from 1965 to 1968. Through their days in the Southwest Conference, they joined in 1976. They've always scored points. And then they went through, 2 Heisman Trophy winners. I think Klingler was one. Nobody knows what happened to him, and I can't remember who the other guy is, but he's an announcer in some of these college football games. They have always been noted for one thing, the Case Keenum years, which I think he stayed for, 10 years, it seems like, and now he's in the NFL. But the one thing they're famous for, what doesn't matter who the coaches are, they always score a lot of points. So here they are as a home favorite of 7.5 up to 10.5 against Texas San Antonio. And score 7 points, turn the ball over 6 times. That's a killer. Last year, Houston led the FBS with 43 forced turnovers. I'm not sure what's happening this year. Head coach Tony Levine is in his 3rd coaching year with this team. They were 9-3 against the house last year. Now, so far, they've yet to cover a game, and this is with a veteran quarterback who last year threw 28 touchdown passes, only 10 interceptions. So it would seem like, everything's in place. How about BYU? John, this team looking like Robbie Bosco. Does anybody remember Robbie Bosco? Don't stare at me now. Come on, you remember 1984 national champions, Lavelle Edwards.
Undefeated?
Yeah, undefeated team. They're looking like that. They've covered both of their games by an average margin of 22 points a game. This is their first home game. And head coach Mendenhall, very solid program. He's in his 10th year. These BY coaches don't come and go. They stay. They are an independent team. And, Jeff, the one thing that bothers me about that, why would they do it? It's got to hurt their recruiting. They're not a Notre Dame type of team that can survive on that. No conference affiliation at all. I have to believe that's going to turn around somewhere down the road. They host Virginia in 9 days. This is an early turnaround game for them. Early line here, though, 2 weeks ago was BYU by 10. When the season started, BYU was posted as a 10-point favorite. Now it's up to 18.5. That's a huge jump. Last week, Houston was a 49.5-point favorite over, who was it? Grambling or somebody. Didn't cover, but won the game 47-0. How many times do we get a team that goes 49.5-point favorite to 18.5-point dog? Well, believe it or not, I looked it up. In the last, 19 times it's happened, if a team gains 50 or more points from the previous number that they had in their previous game, well, they're 11-7 against the number.
Not bad.
Houston plus 18.5, that's a huge margin from the 10 that it originally started. I don't have anything on the game as far as betting it goes, but I would have to look at Houston on those 18.5 points, mostly because of the history of Houston being able to score with any coach they've ever had and any team they've ever put on the field. And this quarterback is a veteran quarterback. I got to believe they can generate enough points to stay within the 18.5. So I would take it if I had to.
Okay, well, you mentioned the Houston defense. Yeah, they were very good last year. 43 turnovers. That was most in the FBS. And even this season, that bad loss to Texas San Antonio, the defense was pretty good, allowing 263 total yards. So this is a very good defense based on last year and this year. That is a big underdog here. BYU also knows quite a bit about defense. 6 starters back on defense. And here's the numbers defensively for the Cougars, the BYU Cougars, over the last 3 years. 3 years ago, they were 22nd in the nation in points allowed with 20 per game. 2 years ago, just 14 points per game. That was 3rd in the nation. And then last year, 22nd in points allowed, 22 points per game. And we've seen it already this year. They stomped UConn 35-10. And then last week against Texas, 41-7. So, Jeff, is this BYU team that should be taken seriously as a top 20 contender?
Well, they won the first 2 games on the road, and no matter who you play, it's always impressive. The first game was against a mediocre UConn team, and then last week against Texas, they got a break there. Texas was breaking a new quarterback, and plus the Texas offensive line is in total disarray. So BYU had got a few breaks there, but still, again, 2 games start the season on the road, very impressive. Houston. They lost, of course, to Texas San Antonio 27-7. Looked like a bad loss at the time, but then again, it turns out San Antonio has a pretty good team. They could have beaten Arizona last Thursday. Houston was 11.5-point favorite in that game. Last year, the Cougars were 4-1. Houston Cougars were 4-1 as a road dog. Running back Kenneth Furrow was averaging 7.6 yards per carry. Quarterback John O'Corn 35-67 with 4 interceptions and 1 TD this year. Last year in a wild game, BYU pulled it out 47-46 as a 10-point favorite. That's why his 18.5 points look pretty good right now. A lot of times when you win 2 games on the road and you come home, you have a slight letdown there because you figure that, boy, the worst is over with. But so I would, the BYU's defense is, very good. They held Texas only 82 rushing yards. And so these 18.5 points, I'm not going to bet this game, but I would lean toward that big point spread here and go with Houston just for the situation. It's hard. I know it's hard to take Houston after they lost that big game, they lost that as a favorite in the first game. But I'll go with the points with Houston just as a lean, John.
Yeah, and I will second that as well. I will take them as a play because, first of all, this Houston team, last 3 years, they've actually been covering numbers, 24-14 against the spread. You look at what happened last year. You mentioned the BYU game. That was a dogfight all the way. Well, Houston was a 10-point dog in that game, 47-46 loss. So they covered. They also played a very good Central Florida team as a 13.5-point dog, 2-touchdown dog, 19-14 final, playing terrific defense. And then that powerhouse Louisville team from last year, they also played as a 17-point dog. It was a 20-13 final. So they've been hanging with these pretty talented teams just as recent as last year. With that said, they did play a Vanderbilt of the SEC in a bowl game as a small dog. They got beat 41-24. But last year's game, some of the notes about that, Houston was 5-0 going into that game. And believe it or not, the first quarter score was 24-21. It was quite a shootout. BYU ended up with 681 yards. Houston with 483. Both teams had 3 turnovers the last October 19th. But again, that was another game that Houston as a big dog covered. So I'm gonna take the Houston Cougars, as I think they are better than they have shown in these first 2 games, and they certainly were pretty good and consistent and covering numbers all of last year. All right, before we get
so who are you, Curly, Mo, or Joe?
I'll be all 3. How's that? I'll be the football too.